She never expected a flight to change her life. The hum of the airplane, the soft golden sunset through the window, a moment of quiet before everything shifted. Tired eyes stared out at the clouds, mind drifting, unaware of the presence next to her. Just an ordinary journey, or so she thought. Across the aisle sat a man everyone noticed, but no one approached, tall, impeccably dressed, with an aura of quiet power. He was a mystery she couldn't ignore. And then, it happened, a simple, accidental touch. Her head brushed his shoulder, a spark neither of them understood. Yet nothing would ever be the same. The airplane hummed steadily as it climbed above the clouds, leaving a golden sunset trailing behind it. Inside the cabin, every detail spoke of quiet luxury. Plush leather seats, polished wood accents, and soft ambient lighting that wrapped the passengers in calm. Amid the hum of the engines, a young black woman settled into her seat by the window. Her curly hair caught the last streaks of sunlight, framing her thoughtful expression as she stared into the horizon. This was a flight like any other, or so it seemed. She had packed lightly, dressed in casual yet elegant travel attire, her bag resting neatly in the overhead compartment. Despite the calm around her, a flutter of excitement and nerves danced in her chest. She wasn't usually this introspective, but something about this journey felt different. As the clouds shifted below, her thoughts wandered, drifting across memories of the life she had left behind and dreams of what awaited her in a city that promised opportunity and uncertainty. Across the aisle sat a man who drew attention without even trying. Tall, with sharp features, a quiet confidence that seemed to fill the space around him. His black suit was impeccable, tailored to perfection, and the subtle tattoo peeking at his wrist hinted at a life far removed from ordinary. He read quietly, occasionally glancing at the small screen in front of him, yet there was a presence about him that seemed impossible to ignore. He was calculated, observant, someone who noticed the smallest details, though no one would suspect the complexity beneath the calm exterior. The woman's gaze flicked briefly toward him, a fleeting curiosity in her eyes, then back to the window. Perhaps it was the way he seemed completely absorbed in his own world, yet somehow aware of everything. Or perhaps it was the subtle aura of authority he exuded that made him impossible to ignore. She didn't know, and she would never admit it, but something about him made her pulse quicken in ways she couldn't name. Outside the cabin, the sunset painted the sky in hues of amber and violet. The light spilled into the cabin, creating patterns on the polished surfaces, glinting off the man's watch, reflecting softly on the woman's skin. Time seemed to slow. There was a quiet serenity, yet an unspoken tension that neither of them acknowledged. They were two strangers, worlds apart in experience, yet the same journey had put them in the same space, their paths intersecting in the most ordinary yet extraordinary way. She adjusted in her seat, tucking a stray curl behind her ear, and exhaled slowly. The faint hum of the engine was almost hypnotic, and soon her eyes grew heavy. For a moment, she let herself drift toward sleep, her head tilting slightly, and the rhythmic sway of the plane lulled her into a light, peaceful slumber. Across the aisle, the man glanced up from his reading, his gaze catching hers for a split second before returning to his screen. There was nothing unusual in their interaction, nothing that hinted at the chaos and change that would ripple through their lives before the flight landed. The scene closes on this quiet moment. A young black woman asleep, a Korean man poised and observant, the golden light of sunset bathing them both. This is the beginning. The calm before a storm, the moment where everything ordinary starts to unravel. The airplane hummed softly beneath them, a floating capsule suspended between clouds and new destinies. For a moment, a brief, impossible moment, time felt still. Her head remained resting against his shoulder, gentle and unintentional, like a quiet exhale of fate. He didn't move. Not because he couldn't, but because something in that softness struck him. People didn't touch him. Not casually. Not without fear. The world he belonged to was made of distance, deliberate, cold, and permanent. Touch was currency, and trust was a luxury his life had outlawed long ago. But this was different. The woman sleeping against him wasn't afraid. She didn't know who he was. She just rested like he was safe. And for reasons he didn't yet understand, he let her. The cabin lights dimmed as the airplane continued onward. Stewardesses whispered, engines hummed, travelers shifted in their seats. And still, they stayed like that. Her breathing steady, his posture unchanged, the world newly quiet around them. When she finally stirred, her eyelashes fluttering open, her mind needed a second to remember where she was. She blinked, lifted her head, and only then realized what had happened. Her eyes widened. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she said instantly, heat rising to her cheeks. I didn't mean to, I'm really sorry." Her words tangled. She tucked her hair behind her ear, face warm with embarrassment. She was expecting irritation, annoyance, maybe disgust. But instead, he smiled. Not a polite smile. Not a dramatic smile. Just the kind of small, genuine smile that slipped out before someone could stop it. "It's all right," he said softly. His voice wasn't what she expected, calm, deep, gentle, almost careful. Their eyes met. A moment. Quiet. And in that quiet, something passed between them. Not romance. Not love. Just recognition. Like two people who were never supposed to cross paths, had suddenly collided in a way the universe had rehearsed for ages. She took a breath, trying to steady herself. "I'm Maya," she offered, still composed but shy around the edges. He hesitated not because he didn't want to answer, but because his name wasn't the kind one said freely. But there was something about this woman. Something disarming. "Jay," he replied. Not his full name, not the name, newspapers whispered. Just the version that felt human. Maya smiled, small and genuine. "Nice to meet you, Jay." And before either could say more, the plane dipped gently as the captain announced the descent into Seoul. Passengers lifted window shades. Light filled the cabin. Clouds parted to reveal a glittering city below, towering skylines, silver rivers, neon veins pulsing with life. Maya stared out, breath-catching. She had never seen a city like this, glowing, alive, endless. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Jay watched her. Not the skyline. "It is," he agreed, but he wasn't talking about the view. The wheels touched down smoothly. Seatbelts clicked, overhead bins opened, bodies shuffled and gathered belongings. But Maya and Jay lingered both, aware that something about this meeting didn't feel accidental. They stepped off the plane together, the air different, now cooler, louder, full of Seoul's vibrant pulse. The terminal bustled with motion, voices, announcements, rolling luggage, hurried footsteps. Yet within the chaos, the space between them felt steady. As they walked toward customs, a small group of sharply dressed men in black suits stood waiting. They bowed deeply the moment they saw Jay. Maya froze. The air shifted. This wasn't a reunion. This wasn't family. This was respect. Serious respect. The kind reserved for someone powerful, feared, known. Jay's expression returned to stillness, a mask one he had worn his entire life. One of the men stepped forward. "Boss," he said quietly. Maya blinked. "Boss? Like, boss? Jay simply nodded, no explanation, before turning back to her with the softest expression, like he didn't want the moment to change. But it already had. "You're important," she said, not accusing, not fearful, just realizing. He held her gaze. Not denying, not confirming, just letting the truth hang in the air. "I'd like to see you again," he said. Calm, direct, honest. Maya swallowed. There was something dangerous here. Not just him, but the pull. The part of her that should have run, didn't. Instead, "Okay," she said, her voice barely above a breath. But enough. The men waited. The world moved. But between Maya and Jay, something lived now. Something neither of them had planned. Something neither of them understood. And something that would not let go. Not now. Not ever. Seoul was a world of its own. A city that didn't sleep, it thrived. Neon signs glowed like fireflies, cars wove through narrow streets, music and late-night laughter spilled into the night air. It was beauty and chaos balanced in one breath. Maya stood outside the airport, suitcase in hand, watching her rideshare app struggle to load. She had no idea that her story had already been rewritten, long before she even stepped foot outside. Because he was watching her from a distance, not in secrecy. Not in secrecy. But with intention. Jay stood just beyond the glass doors, surrounded by the suited men who followed him like shadows. But his gaze wasn't stern now, it was thoughtful. As though he were working through the unfamiliar sensation of missing someone who hadn't even left yet. One of the men leaned close. "Boss, the car is ready." Jay didn't answer immediately. His eyes stayed on Maya. The world had always bent around him. He didn't chase. He didn't ask for things. But today, he stepped forward. Maya was zipping her coat when she heard footsteps approach. She turned and there he was again. The black suit, the quiet confidence, the gaze that held stillness in a world of movement. She wasn't scared. She should have been. But she wasn't. He held out a small, elegant business card. "If you ever need anything," he said simply, "call this number. It will reach me directly." Directly? Not through an assistant. Not through security. Him. Maya accepted it, fingers brushing his for a brief moment, a second of contact that echoed louder than any words exchanged. "Thank you," she replied softly. Their eyes held again. That same quiet recognition. But then, the world resumed. Jay turned away. The men followed. Their footsteps organized, deliberate. His presence leaving the air colder in his absence. Maya watched him go, her mind a whirlwind she couldn't name. Hours later, the city swallowed her in. Tall buildings, glowing crosswalks, advertisements pulsing with color. She found her hotel, checked in, tried to let her thoughts settle, but they wouldn't. She replayed everything. The accidental touch, the smile, the bowing men, the unspoken truth. Who was he? No, she already knew. She didn't need the word to say it. Mafia. The kind of man entire cities adjusted themselves for. The kind of man newspapers spoke about without ever saying his name. And yet, on that plane, he was just someone who let her sleep on his shoulder. That contradiction sat in her chest like a heartbeat. Meanwhile, Jay sat inside the back of a sleek black car, the city lights streaking past the windows in ribbons of blue, white, and gold. His men spoke quietly. They discussed schedules, territories, alliances, threats. He heard none of it. His mind lingered somewhere else entirely. No one had touched him like that in years. No one had looked at him like he was just a person. Not a name. Not a power. Not a danger. Just, yay. He didn't know what to do with that. It unsettled him, but not in the ways he was used to. A knock at Maya's door. It was evening when it happened. Maya was sitting cross-legged on her hotel bed, flipping through guide maps and scribbling ideas for places to explore. A soft knock sounded at the door. She hesitated. Opened it. A man in a sharp black suit bowed politely. "Miss Maya," he said. "Mr. J requests your company for dinner. Transportation is waiting downstairs. Only if you agree. No pressure. No demand. No force. Just a choice." Maya looked down at the card still in her hand. He could have just called. He didn't. He gave her the freedom to refuse. She took a breath and nodded. "Let me get my coat." The dinner. The car rolled through the city, pulling up to a restaurant that didn't look like a restaurant, more like an art museum made of glass and stone. Inside, the lighting was warm, the ambiance soft, the music something between jazz and memory. And there he was, not surrounded by guards, not armored in power, just sitting alone waiting for her. He stood when she approached. Gentle, respectful, unexpected. "You came," he said. His expression didn't demand gratitude. It simply expressed quiet relief. "I wanted to," she replied. They sat. The conversation didn't start with small talk. There were no questions about weather, or work, or travel. Instead, "Why were you on that flight?" he asked. Maya smiled, a little amused. "New beginnings." "That's so," he murmured. Not disbelief, interest. "And you?" she asked. His eyes met hers. "Running from something, and walking towards something else." Not an explanation, but the truth. They shared food, stories, silences that didn't feel empty. He laughed once, a quiet sound, like he wasn't used to it. She watched him and saw loneliness where others might see power. He watched her and saw courage where others might see innocence. The night felt like a conversation they had been waiting years to have with someone they had never met. But every story of light has a shadow. Outside, across the street, in a parked motorcycle helmet, reflecting neon colors, someone watched. Not friendly, not loyal, not invisible. A threat. Maya didn't see them, but Jai did. His expression shifted, subtle but real. His past had finally caught up to this moment. The night wasn't ending peacefully. It was just beginning. The night outside glittered like a city made of stars. Inside the restaurant, everything felt warm, golden, steady, like time had softened itself just to give Maya and Jay a moment of peace. But peace, in Jay's world, never lasted long. Maya didn't notice the change at first, the subtle quiet that slipped into his posture, the way his shoulders shifted just so, muscles calibrating to readiness. His gaze didn't dart or panic. It simply focused. A professional stillness. The kind that comes from a life lived watching shadows more carefully than people. Maya continued speaking, describing her plans for the week, museums, night markets, temples. Her voice was gentle, hopeful, like someone opening a door to a future she believed she could walk into. And Jay listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't let on that anything was wrong. But the man across the street hadn't moved. And real danger doesn't announce itself. It waits. Finally, Jay's eyes returned to her fully. "Would you like to see something tonight?" he asked, voice calm. Maya smiled, unaware of the quiet urgency beneath his tone. "Sure. Where?" He stood up smoothly. "Walk with me." No fear in his voice. No alarm. Just invitation. The kind of invitation that said, "Stay close." They left the restaurant, stepping into the cool evening air. The breeze carried the scent of street food and rain about to fall. Seoul pulsed with life crosswalk beeps, subway vibrations beneath concrete, motorcycles rushing by like sparks. And still, the shadow followed. Maya walked alongside Jay, her coat wrapped around her shoulders. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere quieter," he replied. Not ominous. Not secretive. Just necessary. The city thinned around them. They reached a pedestrian bridge overlooking the river, its surface a sheet of black glass reflecting neon and moonlight. Lanterns swayed softly along the path. Here, the world felt suspended again. Maya leaned against the railing, watching the lights ripple. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Jay didn't look at the river. "I don't get to see things like this often," he admitted. She glanced at him, truly looked at him. "You make it sound like it's a choice not to." His jaw tightened not in anger, but in understanding. "It isn't," he said. Silence settled, not heavy, but meaningful. Maya already knew. Not the details, not the headlines, but the truth. "You're not just important," she said softly. "You're powerful." Jay exhaled a quiet surrender of truth. Yes. Not boastful. Not warning. Just fact. Maya looked at him, not afraid, not blinded, not trying to change him. "Does it ever get lonely?" she asked. That question was not small. It was a key. Jay looked at her now, really looked. "Every day," he said. The vulnerability was light, a flicker but real. Maya's heart didn't race in panic. It ached in recognition. She knew loneliness. The kind that doesn't look like being alone. The kind that looks like being unseen. She nodded slowly. "Yeah, I know that feeling." Jay's gaze softened. For a moment, the world around them was suspended, just two lives bruised in different ways but stitched together in one breath. But shadows travel. And this one had arrived. A single motorcycle engine echoed down the road, slow, deliberate. Not passing, approaching. Jay didn't turn his head, only shifted his stance slightly, stepping closer to Maya, not shielding her like she was fragile, but placing himself exactly where he needed to be. The motorcycle stopped at the base of the bridge. The rider didn't remove the helmet, didn't move, didn't speak. The air changed. Maya felt it, even if she didn't understand it. Her pulse quickened. "Jai?" she whispered. He didn't look away from the rider. His voice was calm, controlled. "Stay behind me." Not fear. Instruction. The rider lifted their visor slow, revealing cold eyes that held no emotion. "Boss?" The man called out the word, dripping with something like mockery. "Your world is slipping." Jay's men, who were always near, even when unseen, appeared at the far ends of the bridge, silhouettes moving like shadows, sharpening into form. But Jay lifted one hand, stopping them. This was not a battle. This was a message. The rider continued, voice too casual. "You let someone into your orbit. That's unlike you." Maya understood now. Not all dangers show teeth. Some smile while delivering a warning. The rider tapped the side of his helmet. "That's all. Enjoy your night, boss." The motorcycle engine revved sharp, slicing the quiet, and he disappeared into the veins of the city. The silence afterward wasn't peaceful. Maya's breath trembled, not in fear of Jay but of the world he lived in. A world with no safe edges. Jay finally turned to her, not defensive but honest. "This is why I don't let people close," he said. Maya's eyes lifted to his. "And yet," she whispered, "you let me." The admission hung between them, fragile, dangerous, real. He didn't deny it, because it was the truth. The river shimmered, the city hummed, and two lives stood on the edge of something neither could walk away from now. Because once the universe ties two people's fates, even danger can't undo the knot. The night on the bridge didn't end with fear. It ended with truth unspoken but undeniable. When the motorcycle disappeared into the veins of the city, the air settled again, but something had changed. Not between them, but around them. The city looked different now. The lights were brighter, the shadows sharper, the silence louder. Maya stood beside Jay, her hand still gripping the railing. Her heartbeat was loud in her ears, not just from what she saw, but from what she understood. She turned to him slowly, searching his expression for meaning. "Is this normal for you?" she asked. Jay didn't look away from the city. Yes. Not defensive. Not ashamed. Just real. "It's the price of power," he continued. "Every choice echoes." Maya breathed in, letting that settle. She didn't ask why he lived like this. She didn't ask what he had done. She simply said softly, "Is it worth it?" That question did what no threat, no rival, no enemy had ever done. It stopped him. He finally turned to face her, really face her. His eyes weren't cold or guarded, now they were tired. Not weak. Human. "I don't know anymore," he said. A confession. Not to her, but to himself. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of the river and faraway rain. The city continued moving, but the world on that bridge slowed to the rhythm of two hearts, learning the shape of each other. Maya stepped closer, not because she thought he needed comfort, but because she did. And without thinking, without hesitating, Jay reached for her hand. Not possessively. Not forcefully. Just gently. Their fingers didn't lock. They just touched like the first note of a song the world wasn't supposed to hear. Maya exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "You don't have to decide anything tonight," she said. Her voice was steady, warm, real. "You just have to be here." Jay's eyes softened the tension in his shoulders, unwinding just enough to show the depth of exhaustion he carried. "Stay," he said quietly. Not an order. A request. That one word, stay, felt heavier than any vow. Maya nodded. "Okay." They didn't speak much on the ride back. The city lights flickered over their faces, blue, gold, violet like stained glass, shifting against skin. Jay sat close enough to feel, but not close enough to overwhelm. Maya watched him from the corner of her eye, the way he held himself, the way he breathed, the way silence lived inside him. He wasn't unreadable. He was careful. And that made him easier to understand than she expected. When the car pulled up to his building, Maya's breath caught. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, it was quiet, guarded, elegant in its restraint. Black stone and glass, sharp lines, a place built for privacy. Inside, the air was warm. Soft lighting glowed from recessed fixtures, casting gentle amber tones along the walls. The space was minimal but not empty. Everything had purpose, balance, discipline. Maya stepped inside, taking it in. "You live alone?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "It's safer." She nodded because she understood. Loneliness we choose is different from loneliness forced upon us. Jay moved toward the kitchen area, quietly preparing tea, not calling for staff, not commanding anyone else to do it. He placed the cup in front of her, careful, intentional. Maya smiled softly. "Thank you." They sat in silence for a few moments, the kind of silence that didn't need filling. The kind of silence that just was. Finally, Maya spoke. "You don't have to tell me everything. I don't want to know. The things that hurt you." Jay listened not to respond, but to take in the meaning behind her words. "But," she continued, "I do want to know who you are when no one is watching." Jay's breath was slow, deep. "Then you'll need to stay a little longer," he said. His tone wasn't romantic. It wasn't seductive. It was honest. Maya nodded. "I can do that." There are moments in life that do not announce their importance. Moments that feel simple, quiet, ordinary, until later when you realize they were the hinge everything turned on. This was one of those moments. Maya didn't know that the rider on the bridge had been sent for one reason: to watch her, not to threaten, not to scare, to assess. She wasn't a random stranger anymore. She was part of Jay's orbit, which meant she was now part of a world where affection had consequences. And choices had prices. But for now, none of that mattered. Because Jay stood in front of her, and for the first time in years he looked alive, present, not performing, not commanding, just existing. With her, Maya's voice was soft when she finally spoke again. "What happens now?" Jay didn't hesitate. "We take this one moment at a time." And something in that simplicity felt safe. Not safe from the world, but safe from the fear of feeling. The dining hall of the estate didn't look like a place where meals were simply eaten. It felt like somewhere decisions were made, decisions that could rewrite lives. A long, lacquered table stretched almost to the opposite wall, lit from above by a warm chandelier that cast golden reflections across polished surfaces. Art lined the walls, not the loud kind, but the kind that knew it was valuable. Everything here whispered power, without ever raising its voice. Maya paused in the doorway. Her reflection glimmered faintly in the polished floor, the silk dress Jay had chosen for her flowing softly around her, delicate but dignified, almost ceremonial. It felt unreal to be wearing something so beautiful, like stepping into a life she hadn't prepared for. She took a slow breath and stepped inside. Jay was already seated, suit jacket placed neatly beside him, sleeves rolled to his forearms. His tattoos didn't scream for attention, they were subtle, lines and symbols inked with intention. Pieces of history only he understood. He lifted his gaze when she entered. No smile. Just presence. But something in his expression softened a quiet recognition. He gestured to the seat beside him. Not across? Beside. Close. Maya approached and sat, feeling her heartbeat in her throat. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Jay placed a small portion of grilled sea bass on her plate. He did it gently, not as a command, but like a habit, like he was used to watching over people he cared for, even if he didn't say it. You didn't eat earlier, he murmured. Maya blinked. You noticed? I notice more than most assume, he replied. She looked down, unsure how to respond. Her appetite was still uncertain, fear and confusion tangled too tightly inside her. He watched her for a moment, then set his own fork down. This world shifted too quickly for you, he said. You are still catching up. That is expected. Maya looked up, surprised. She had expected dominance, control, demands. Instead, he was giving her space. Time. Respect. And that confused her more than anything. Her voice came out quietly. Why me? Jay didn't react immediately. His eyes lowered for a moment, not evasive, but thoughtful. On the plane, he said slowly, everyone who saw me reacted. Some stared, some avoided me, some pretended not to notice while watching behind mirrored screens. His voice lowered to something quieter, something almost vulnerable. But when your head rested on my shoulder, you didn't move away. Maya's breath stilled. You didn't know who I was, he continued. Yet you didn't fear me. And for a moment, a very brief moment, I felt ordinary. Ordinary. Not feared. Not worshipped. Not obeyed. Just human. Maya's chest tightened because that sounded like loneliness said out loud. Before she could speak, the dining room door opened. Min, Jay's right hand, stepped inside, always composed, always still. But tonight his posture was too controlled, too deliberate. Hai's expression shuddered. What is it? He asked, voice shifting into command. Min's tone was precise. They know. The room seemed to exhale. Jay's jaw tightened, though his face remained calm. Dead calm. How many? Jay asked. Enough, Min answered. They want a meeting. Tonight. Maya didn't understand everything. But she understood threat. She watched Jay the way his gaze sharpened, but his breathing stayed steady. A man who lived inside storms. He spoke without looking away from her. They are not happy that I married someone they did not choose. Maya swallowed. And they blame me. He didn't deny it. You don't need to fear them, he said quietly. No one touches what is mine. It wasn't possession in his tone. It was protection. But that wasn't the part that frightened her. It was the second meaning. They would try to hurt him because of her. She didn't want that. Not this man who looked at her before speaking. Not this man who noticed when she skipped meals. Not this man who seemed to want peace more than power, even in a world built on power. Her hand moved before she realized. Resting gently on top of his. Jay froze. Not because he disliked it, but because he wasn't used to being touched first. Maya's voice trembled but did not break. Then teach me, she whispered. Teach me how to stand in your world, so I don't become the reason it cracks. Jay exhaled slow, controlled, but shaking somewhere deep beneath the surface. For the first time since she met him, he smiled. Not wide, not dramatic, but real. You do not need to become anything other than who you already are, he said softly. That is why you are here. Maya felt something inside her shift, not surrender, but understanding. For the first time, the estate didn't feel like a gilded cage. It felt like the beginning of something neither of them had language for. The estate changed after dinner. It wasn't something Maya could see, it was something she could feel. like the air had thickened, like every shadow was suddenly paying attention. Jay walked ahead of her through the hallway, his steps steady, controlled, silent. He didn't speak not because he was ignoring her, but because something inside him had shifted. The calm, introspective man from dinner was still there, but layered now with something heavier, sharper. The boss? This was the side of him the world bowed to. Maya followed, her fingers tracing the wall subtly to keep her balance. The estate was large, too large. Every room seemed to have secrets. Every corner whispered of things done long before she arrived. They reached an elevator, sleek, silent, hidden behind what looked like a paneled wall. It opened with no sound. Maya stepped in beside him. The elevator didn't go up, it went down. That told her everything. Jay didn't look at her, but he spoke. "You may hear things," he said quietly. "Do not react to them." Maya nodded. "And whatever is said," he continued, voice low, "do not look away from me. Not look away. Even if they insulted her. Even if they threatened her. Even if they questioned her right to stand beside him." He wasn't preparing her to stay silent. He was preparing her to stand with him. "I understand," she whispered. The elevator slowed a soft hum, then a gentle stop. When the doors opened, Maya stepped into a room that looked nothing like the estate above. Concrete walls. Black glass windows. Long shadows. A table at the center, not decorative. Functional. A table where power was decided. 3 men sat waiting. Not guards. Not soldiers. Leaders. The kind who didn't raise their voices to kill a man, they simply spoke, and others did it for them. Maya felt her heartbeat pick up. Jay didn't hesitate. He walked to the head of the table, and the room adjusted itself around him. Not physically, but with presence. He didn't dominate the room by force. He was the room. Maya stood beside him, just a half step back, exactly where he had shown her to stand. Not behind him, not in front of him, beside. One of the men spoke first, older, hair streaked with silver, wearing a suit that was too perfect to be coincidence. "So," the man said, voice smooth, "this is the wife." The word was rolled slowly, deliberately, like a coin being weighed. Maya kept her eyes on Jay, just like he told her. The second man, younger, sharper, smile curved like a blade, leaned forward. "She doesn't look like she belongs here," he said. Maya didn't flinch. Not because she wasn't affected, but because she refused to give them the satisfaction. The third man didn't speak at all. He simply stared at her, eyes calculating, measuring her soul like currency. Jay finally spoke. "You called this meeting," he said evenly. "Say what you need to say." Silverhair leaned back. "We are confused," he began. "You have always been deliberate in every alliance you formed, every move you made, every decision." His eyes flicked to Maya. Not with cruelty, with evaluation. "So we ask, why her?" Maya didn't look away. She didn't shift her posture. She remembered his words. "Don't react, don't break, don't look away." Jay didn't answer with defense or justification. He answered with truth. "She is the only person who has ever seen me," he said. "Not as a leader. Not as a legacy. Not as a weapon. As a man." The room went very still. Silverhair's jaw tightened, not aggressive, but unsettled. "You know what this looks like," the younger man said. "An emotional decision. A personal one. Personal decisions compromise judgment." Jay's expression didn't change. "You're assuming love weakens a man," he replied quietly. "But you forget a man who has something to lose is a man who will burn the world to keep it." The silence that followed was thick enough to feel. The older man exhaled slowly. "This marriage shifts alliances," he said. "It changes expectations. It changes promises. If you are asking us to accept that, we need assurance." Jay nodded once, a movement precise enough to be a signature. "You will have it." The younger man tapped his fingers on the table. "And the girl?" he asked, eyes sliding to Maya. That was the first time Maya made a move. Not her body, her voice. "If you have questions about me," she said, calm and clear, "ask them directly. Not around me. I am here. I am not made of glass. I am not an ornament. Speak to me." The silence that followed cracked. Silverhair stared. The younger man blinked. The quiet one smirked, not mocking. Appreciating. Jay didn't turn to look at her, but Maya felt it. Approval. The older man nodded slowly. "Then tell us," he said. "Are you prepared for a life where danger is not a possibility but a constant? Where your husband is never safe? Where peace is borrowed time?" Maya breathed in slow, steady, and answered simply, I am already here. That means I already chose. The quiet man leaned back. Well, he murmured, she's either brave or foolish. Maya met his eyes. Sometimes they're the same thing. The younger man actually laughed short, sharp, unwilling, but genuine. Jay finally placed his hand on the table, not slamming, not threatening. Just steady. This is my wife, he said. You don't need to approve. You only need to understand. No one argued. No one challenged. Decision made. Meeting over. Jay turned to Maya. Not urgently. Not with relief. With pride. Let's go, he said. And she walked beside him, not behind. Not anymore. The morning sun spilled through the curtains, painting golden streaks across the room. Maya stirred, blinking against the light, a strange mix of disbelief and wonder washing over her. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was, and then it hit her, the ring. The silk sheets, the faint scent of his cologne lingering in the air. Everything felt surreal, like she was still dreaming. Jay, already awake, watched her with that same quiet intensity that had captivated her from the start. He reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face, and she realized something simple yet undeniable. Their lives had changed forever. One night, one touch, one decision had spiraled into something neither of them could have predicted, yet neither wanted to reverse. They moved through the morning in an almost unspoken rhythm. Coffee brewed, soft sunlight kissed their skin, and the world outside seemed to fade into insignificance. For Maya, every glance from Jay carried the weight of unspoken promises, every quiet smile a memory she hadn't known she'd longed for. And in that stillness, she understood. Life before him was a story she had already outgrown. The day stretched onward, full of small discoveries and tender touches. As they prepared to leave the room, Maya glanced at him, curiosity and affection dancing in her eyes. He raised a brow, half amused, half serious, as if daring her to ask the question neither had spoken aloud. And then, as the door closed behind them, the world outside seemed to pause for a moment. A flash of memory from the flight, a spark of connection that had started it all, flickered in Maya's mind. She smiled, a knowing smile, because even in the chaos of the unexpected, she realized she wouldn't trade a single second. Life had looped them together, in ways both surprising and inevitable. And as they walked forward, side by side, Maya understood that some stories don't just end, they evolve, in ways only the heart can truly comprehend.